we're going to switch entirely away from crop protection towards crop nutrient management. So I shall hand over to Sajjad Awan, who's going to talk to you now about nitrogen management and our RB209 Fertiliser manual.
Hello everyone. I would like to start off with the world's most renowned book, the Bible. Now, trust me, it's not going to be a sermon, it's just to show you the book. Now, here is another renowned book, and that is RB209. Now, I'm starting off with a question. Can somebody tell me what is common between the two books? Anyone? No? Right, okay. They both provide the guidance. So, RB209 is one of the most important books in crop nutrient management in the UK. I'm Sajjad Awan, and today I'm going to tell you about our work on RB209, AHDB's revision that we've taken on the responsibility to start revising the fertilizer manual. During my talk, I'll be talking about three things actually. The first one is, why do we need a plan, nutrient management plan? Then I'll talk about, I'll try to convince you, giving an example of nitrogen fertilizer, followed by revision and development of RB209, and lastly, I'll update you with the nutrient management software. Right, so why do we need our nutrient management plan? The first question. The answer to that question is that if you would have a balanced nutrient fertilizer, balanced amount of nutrients present in the soil, they're going to determine how good or how bad the crop you're going to get. For example, if you would have, I just take it literally as Newton's third law of motion, that every action's got reaction. So if you've got action going on into the soil, then there will be a reaction outside as the crop. So more action in the soil, better your crop is going to be. So if you've got a better crop, that means it's going to improve your yield and the quality would be higher. That means that you're going to receive a better premium. The farmers would have a better premium of their crop, for example, higher protein contents or higher oil contents in oilseed rape, for example. And this eventually is going to maximize the farmer's profit. Now, we should also consider that it's not just about the yield, it also is about the environment. If you would have a better nutrient management plan, it's going to give you a better efficiency, nutrient use efficiency, and it's going to serve our environment as well. For example, here you might have seen this several times. So a tractor spreading the fertilizer goes into the soil. If the fertilizer is in excess, it's beyond the uptake level of the crop. With the rainfall, it's going to end up into the streams and eventually it's going up into the lakes and causing eutrophication. That is one of the problems that we have seen over the past several years in Europe. Here is an example for nitrogen use efficiency. So 0 here, right in the center, along the x-axis, it shows you that this is the optimum amount of nitrogen which is required by the crop. And along the y-axis, you can see the net losses. If you are applying, this data is quite clear. If you're applying too much of fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer, you can see if you apply 100 kilogram more, then you're losing nearly 50 pounds per hectare. And if you apply 150 more, you're losing nearly 100 pounds per hectare. That means that the profits are going down. And it's just a very similar point as Susanna mentioned earlier on, that the farmers are actually struggling to cope because of the cost of the production of the crops is getting higher and higher. And that is one of the important reasons that if we would have a nutrient management plan, we can reduce the cost. Similarly, it's not just to emphasize on the higher concentration, it's also the lower concentration. If you do not apply enough, again, there will be losses of nutrient, of the yield. So, it's important to stay within the target zone. And the target zone here is where you stay in between plus or minus 25 to 30 kilogram of nitrogen. It is really complex. And in order to understand this complexity, AHDB has funded a big project. We also call it LEARN. This is to understand yield and nitrogen use. And it was a very large consortium, including industry and people from universities, research organizations, and the government as well. Now, these are the kind of experiments that we've been doing previously on a smaller scale. It wasn't as small, but if you look at the extent of the trials that they've been done in these experiments, we call Chessboard trials, they're much larger. So they give you a better resolution what's happening in the field. So these trials, they were done over several times, over several fields, to get a better knowledge of what's going on with the nitrogen fertilizer or the nitrogen which is present in the soil. Now, these maps, they're yield maps. What they're showing here is the variation that I was talking about earlier. This is clearly indicating that if you would have, within the same field, you are getting a huge variation. For example, at 2010, at the top one, 8.5, the bluish color is showing that the yield is lower, whereas the reddish one, the yield is higher. So 8.5 to 11 tons per hectare within the same field, there is so much of variation. Similarly, in all other fields, you can see the variation. And part of the reason for this variation is what's going on in the soil. But there are several other factors involved, but one of the most important ones is nitrogen. So we tried to get a picture of nitrogen fertilizer. What we've seen here, that soil mineral nitrogen data is showing you that there is, again, a lot of variation within the same field. So you can clearly see that some of the fields require 150 kilogram on one side of the field, and very close to the other one, you need 280 kilogram of nitrogen. That means that these variations, we must be able to comprehend with these variations, and we should be aware of these variations. Previously, what we've been suggesting was that you just apply 190 or 250 kilogram of nitrogen per hectare and just apply uniformly. But now here, the picture is very different. If we are applying too much or too little of fertilizer, that means we are losing our money. So, because it's nearly the cost of 1 kilogram of a nitrogen fertilizer equals 5 kilogram of your wheat grain. That means that we should be aware of, we should consider seriously how much nitrogen or any of the other fertilizer that we're going to apply, depending on similar kind of maps that we create. Now, these variations, they can be due to, means the variations, it is quite complex. So apart from the structure of the soil, the rainfall, several other factors, I'm just considering about the nitrogen supply. So when we predict, then they can be variations. So the variations, they can come from soil nitrogen supply. Again, that depends on the weather conditions during the previous year, which crop did you grow, the yield of that crop. So all these factors, they contribute to a soil nitrogen supply, then crop nitrogen demand. So the recent varieties that we are developing, they are quite different, they're variable. Their root structure is different than what we used to have 15 or 20 years ago. And the fertilizer and nitrogen recovery, really important point that about 60% of the fertilizer that we apply is used up by the plant. The remaining 40% is beyond the use of the plant or the crop. So, considering all these factors, we must have a nutrient management plan. So, what we've got here is RB209. I'm going to start talking about planning your nutrient management using RB209. RB209 is the national standard for England and Wales. It's different for Scotland and Northern Ireland. In Ireland, what they do is probably they use RB209, but they give it a different name. It is a foundation for nutrient management, planning, and advice. It is relied upon by people like yourself, FACTS qualified advisors, and the technical farmers. Each FACTS qualified advisor is examined and re-examined on RB209 because RB209 is revised. Re-examining is because the revision of RB209. So DEFRA used to revise RB209. So the first publication came out somewhere in 1973. And after those years, they have been sporadic publications of RB209. 7th edition in 2000, and the last 8th edition was published in 2010. So 10 years gap. That's a huge, massive gap. That means that we're not moving along the research which is being currently conducted throughout the country or around the world. In order to give a better understanding to the agronomists and the farmers, we should consider to publish more regular intervals and shorter intervals. For example, here is a very... No, sorry. Oh, this is just here. Sorry. Oh, this was that phone, not yours. Very, very simple example. 10 years ago, this was my phone. This is the phone that I used, my first phone, in 2003 or 4, I think. Really good phone. But now, here is another one. Now, if you are using the similar kind of phones, no Nokia phone is probably not as good as the ones that we've got these smartphones. These smartphones, they've got a lot more to offer compared to those old phones. Similarly, in RB209, we are trying to improve RB209 so that it keeps up with the research and the knowledge gained during the recent years. So it is crucial that it should be regularly revised. So this is the reason that we've taken on the responsibility of revision of RB209. Now, I was doing this work 3-4 weeks ago just to see how much information do we have on the nitrogen fertilization of malting barley. At AHDB, we have a wealth of information. Now, this is the amount of information that I received on just one search. So 15 high-quality publications. We at AHDB has funded so many projects on nutrition that we can use all that wealth of knowledge to update RB209. How are we going to do this? We have formed our partnership. In this partnership, we've got academics, researchers, farmers, and people from industry. So we're going to get all the information from these people. We've got technical working groups, we've got steering groups. We get the information, we sit, we talk, and we decide that these are our priorities, and we follow those priorities. So we're going to include the high, top quality research in RB209, keeping all the stakeholders on board. And we will carry on revising it. The first revision of RB209 is going to be out in summer 2017. And our plan is to regularly revise, keep revising it. So the next one, the 10th edition, should come out in 2019 and 2021 and so on. Then we'll continue developing RB209. So how do we develop RB209? There is a huge amount of work behind the scenes. Means when you see a recommendation in RB209, that means that clearly there is a huge amount of work which has been carried out by the researchers. The researchers, they do the experiments, get the data together, and that data is analyzed. As a result of analysis, we receive the recommendations. These recommendations then they filter into RB209, and RB209 is again used by the farmers or by agronomists, and then they give us the feedback, and that feedback is really crucial to us. What we'll do, we use the feedback and then plan more experiment, and this cycle would continue. Now, towards the end, I would like to talk about the nutrient planning software. So one of the most important one is right at the top, Planet. A lot of you will be aware of this software. This is available online. It currently is being managed by DEFRA. There is another one, Manor and PK. Some of the others, they're also available on CD versions. Some other software are Gatekeepers, Muddy Boots, tried and tested. There might be several more that I did not put them here. So just to update you here that we at AHDB are also planning to not just have a book, a hard copy of RB209, we also trying to get the information on cloud. So RB209 is going to be present on the cloud, and any changes that we're going to make in that RB209, they would reflect straight into the Planet. So we are going to take over the responsibility of managing Planet as well. And right towards the end, I would just like to inform you that AHDB has got other resources available. For example, these tools are really important tools, for example, for calculating yield or for converging the fertilizer rates. The all information is there online, and the links are on there on your printed copies as well. With that, I'll thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Sajad?
What's it costing yourselves to redo it? The RB209?
Well, for the first revision, it's just about, because the information we already have got our own projects, is going to cost us about £100,000. For Planet, however, the cost is going to be much higher. But if somebody else is planning to do it, it is going to cost a lot more because they will have to buy in the data from other organizations.
What's the time frame on the Planet update, or are you taking over? Is that
This is long-term priority, and it might take a few years, maybe 2 years, up to 2 years. But yeah, the process is ongoing.
Is the format of the publication going to change in terms of what you see? Because at the moment it's a bit...
Well, means, yeah, that's true. Means it is quite difficult. If you read every page of every line in RB209, is like, you cannot, it's so difficult to get rid of it. Now, what we are planning to decrease, there is so much of information which is being duplicated. So we're going to remove the duplication. So that would reduce the size. And also, we are going to split it into 6 chapters. So that means that if you need one for arable, you can have 20 pages worth of a copy that you can roll and put in your pocket. Principal nutrient management or organic matters. So all these copies, chapters are going to be printed separately as booklets instead of having one big thick book.
Thank you. Is it worth saying, Sajad, that this is a cross-AHDB project?
Well, yes, of course. Yeah, this is all sectors are involved in this project. It's not just cereals and oilseeds. All 6 sectors are involved in this project. So if anybody got any other questions, that's my email, and yeah, get in touch, and yeah, we can go from there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.